But verse 2, I will tell you of the wrestle which I had before God, before I received a remission of my sins. Often we look at the book of Enos and think that it's this great story about revelation, and it is. There's no question about that. But this was not Enos embarking on a journey to seek revelation just for figuring out how to hear the voice of the Lord or to receive answers to prayers. It's a story about Enos, who now seems to have a prophetic mantle of some sort, and he probably feels inadequate, and he needs to know that he's okay with the Lord. He wants a remission of his sins. He wants to know about his condition before God, similar to Joseph Smith going into the sacred grove. He simply wanted to know if he was going to be able to find forgiveness for his soul.
What I love that Tyler's taught here is that by small and simple things are great things brought to pass. And what Tyler's modeling here is that sometimes we just need to slow down a bit and ask ourselves, what are the little details that are going on in the Book of Mormon that help me to better understand the Lord's purposes? And we want to point out a couple of interesting things that Enos is trying to convey to us. Right? I mean, this is his story of salvation that he's putting into the text. But he uses a lot of really cool and symbolic language. And if you consider, he says he goes out to hunt. So there's all this hunting language. He uses phrases like beasts. And you might look at, how does he describe his own experience when he feels the remission of sins? In fact, if we look down at verse 3, he says this, I went to hunt beasts in the forest, and the words which I had often heard my father speak concerning eternal life and the joy of the saints sunk deep into my heart. Now, if you're a hunter, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get an arrow to sink deep into the heart of an animal and slay the beast. And it's interesting that Enos realizes he is the beast. His fallen nature needs to have that arrow of God's light and love just sink deep in his heart. And listen to this interesting thing. And my soul hungered. Okay, when people go out hunting, particularly in Enos's day, it's because they're hungry. Right? They didn't have grocery stores. You just kind of go find whatever you want in the cold aisle or the freezer aisle. He had to go out with patience and skill and labor to go find food so he could survive. But what he really discovered was it wasn't just feeding his body that mattered. He needed to feed his soul. And he needed to slay the fallen man, the beast that all of us actually have, and let the words that he'd learned from his father and his mother penetrate deep into his heart.
Let me just comment on that one. One of the incredible principles here is what it was that changed that from hunting beasts to hunting the beast, the natural man. Something shifted because he went out with a physical need and ended up hunting something very differently. Why? Notice the wording in verse 3. The words which I had often heard my father speak concerning eternal life and the joy of the saints sunk deep into my heart. Elder Neal A. Maxwell once said something along the lines of, some of history's greatest sermons will be preached from the pulpit of memory to an audience of one. And I think that finds no greater fulfillment than in a family setting where children are raised, and if they hear words often about the joy of the saints and the eternal life that is promised, that can be registered in the mind. And even if that child wanders for days, months, years, decades, there will be a time when maybe the moment's right and they're engaged in something, and it will create this moment where, as Taylor's talking, their soul will hunger and they will reach out for that sustaining hand.